we're set. Okay, so in the assignment, the first thing it told us to discuss was we're going to start with those questions. Did you guys read through the questions for preparing tonight? What are the 3 diversity parameters and how they are different? It was that very first article that was the 20-page one that we read. It was making differences matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, just a second. I'm going to close out these other links so I don't have 12 open at the same time so we can all be on the same page. The questions were, sorry, I'm getting right there to them. What are the 3 diversity parameters? Is it paradigms and how they are different? Paradigms, thanks, and how they are different. And, you know, when I was going through it, it was kind of interesting when you read that large 20-page document on making differences matter. So what were the 3 ones?
Assimilation, where we're all the same.
What?
The assimilation is one of them, where we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
The one that we celebrate all of our differences.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the simulation's the differential, and then the last one was
Integration.
Yep.
And integration is the equal opportunity and valuing cultural differences.
Yeah.
So, Chris, are you on the page where it says leader discussion?
Yep. Yep, it says to go over the questions that started with those 3 groups questions, and then yeah, I'm in there. So the part 1 was ask one person at a time which of the following about each one of those, making differences matter. So I guess the question was, have you guys ever worked in an organization and you observed or worked with that shows some aspect of the paradigms you choose, whether you think the paradigm was effective for that organization? So do you guys all want to grab one and tell me about it that you've maybe seen in a work area?
Let me see.
I know, it's kind of an odd, this one was a little different of a topic to go over.
Yeah.
So I like the integration, the newer one, where you're actually celebrating the differences, but you're promoting the opportunities and the different values and the different cultures all at the same time to bring together great impact on the company. So I've worked with that one and I like it. I have worked with the differentiation one as well, where we're celebrating differences. In my last role before this one, I was in HR, but I worked mainly in diversity. I was in the culture and diversity pillar. But that was one of our main aspects was diversity communication and working with the leaders to not only make sure that people of different cultures and backgrounds were brought to the table, but also had a seat at the table. So there's a difference between, let's say, being invited to the dance and actually being invited out on the dance floor when it comes to diversity and different cultures. And I think that's where, just because you hire people of many different backgrounds doesn't mean that your company's diverse or truly integrated, or that you have that integration paradigm in there. It's what are the leaders doing to actually truly integrate them and have them feel welcome within the company.
For me, something that comes to mind is I used to actually work up at BYU Idaho on campus. I was an admissions counselor, and we had a lot of responsibilities, but one was obviously we counseled prospective students on admissions policies, did the whole application process, all that fun stuff. But I think the one that kind of rings true to me is this differentiation. So we celebrate differences because one of our responsibilities was we had to give tours of campus to prospective students, and everybody was different in the way that they did it. And we were happy about that because it was a very personalized experience. Everyone had different experiences that they would share. So something that comes to mind that they would purposely seek out people of different backgrounds or roots to help us become, I guess, more rounded and being proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I currently work in a classroom for intervention for reading and math. And two of the ladies I work with, their first languages are not English. One lady is from Japan and the other lady is from Mexico. So the diversity. Oh, I think I lost you guys.
No, you didn't lose us. We can hear you. We just can't see your video. It's not a big deal. I think we can hear you. We're good.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So with the group of us working together, it's interesting the different perspective of how we teach the reading and math, coming from our different cultures and the different languages.
I work in a school setting too. I run operations for a school, just like the front end and all the paperwork and the state reporting, and we have a lot of people in different cultures too. And I really noticed like there is a big barrier sometimes just because of what they think is acceptable. So something that I would think acceptable just because of that social aspect of what we're taught kind of in different environments. And it's kind of been interesting, but I kind of see more of our integration in our work environment because we seem to use that to an advantage for everyone because they can bring in pieces that I can't bring in from my work area that I didn't get, It's not something I learned as a child or really manage that piece. And so it's great to have these people with different backgrounds to bring in and really add to the team instead of think that they're different. Just different is okay. But having them and then taking their input of what they celebrated or what they did and bring it into the classroom setting is fun too, to see the differences in the cultures. And it really brings, I feel like, diversity to the kids and also acceptance across the board. So the next, do you guys have anything else on that one?
I don't know if I have. I just have a question that's been kind of sitting on my mind. So my job, it requires a very specific skill set. So I'm a credit analyst for commercial and industrial lending. And so it's hard because I feel like the people that have the same skill set as me all kind of come from a similar background.
Mm-hmm.
And we need that specific skill set because of the amount of responsibility that we have. So how is it that you can find diversity in something that requires something so specific? That's something that I'm like grappling with right now.
I think that's hard because I work in a school setting and we all have different skill sets, but I also don't have someone who does the exact same thing I do. We're all in a different setting. Like I run operations, but my director is from England and he's really great with people. And so he runs the people side and I run the paperwork side. So I could see where you're struggling with that because that would be really hard to see how do you have diversity and still have productivity, right? Because you're talking that skill set's what really makes them effective at what they're doing.
Yeah.
Anyone have any thoughts on that one?
It's okay if you don't. It's just something that I've been grappling with.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is a hard one.
A little bit more detail around what you're describing before I could
Sure.
kind of give some insight into that?
Well, so my day consists of essentially analyzing companies' financial statements in order to see if they are still able for the bank to lend to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need someone that's very competent at like accounting, finance, business, that has the ability to analyze all of this important financial stuff. But I feel like I work with the same type of people, kind of raised in the same type of environment. And so it's hard to, I'm just trying to think.
Same type of people.
I guess, same demographic of people.
Same as you?
Yeah.
Okay.
All about the same age. We're in our young 20s, all
And
fresh
so
out of college.
The company has not found a way to throw the net out there and grab people from different cultures and backgrounds.
Right.
Because they are there. It's just up to your company to locate where they're at. Whether they target certain colleges that have a higher percentage in diversity, or certain organizations. There's accounting organizations, or you'll be very surprised to find, I'm sure, that your particular job set, there is an organization that's just, let's say, an African American organization. Just within HR, there is an organization, an association that is for Hispanics. And so, are they throwing that recruiting net out to those particular areas to try to bring in people from those demographics? Sure. That would be a good question to come to your leadership with.
I think it's a great point.
Because they're there. It's just, are they truly trying to locate them?
Yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily a priority for them. Like, oh, they found someone that can do the job, so we're going to hire them.
Yeah, in some companies, diversity is not a priority right now. It's a newer thing to a lot of companies. And, it's not something that we say, okay, we need to check the box and, okay, we have a certain amount of people of color or a certain amount of women, because you don't want goals or those settings either. But are you recruiting in those particular areas to give your company the opportunity to find someone with that diversity?
Mm-hmm.
See, and I think it's a matter of understanding what kind of diversity that company's trying to have. If it's like a simulation, we're all the same. I mean, some companies believe they have the diversity, but it's not the integrated diversity.
Yeah. And that's a big one right there. Just because you're bringing the people of diverse backgrounds into your company, are you truly, like, how I gave the example of, yes, they're being invited to the dance, but are they actually being invited to dance?
Yeah. Good points.
Yeah.
Let's give you some direction.
So moving on to the next one, it says, is color blindness the same thing as discrimination and fairness assimilation? What do you guys think?
That's deep.
I know.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because we all want to say that, it doesn't matter the skin color, we're all the same, everyone wants to get on that quote there. But I think that puts you into the assimilation paradigm, where you think we're all the same, and that can get you into trouble as well.
So did anyone watch about the color blindness? I did, and I actually don't think it's the same as discrimination. Working in my HR area, I do too, because I feel like sometimes, I know in HR,
I think it's discrimination.
I think it can go both ways, because I think sometimes we focus so heavily on making sure I have so many of my diversity in my school, right? Because you want to meet some standards that sometimes I think color blindness in reality can, like I've explained it, I have a brother who's colorblind. He says, well, you don't really see it that way. They're all the same to me, right? And so sometimes I think color blindness can be viewed as, we're seeing everybody the same versus, okay, I'm not hiring someone because they're black or I'm not hiring someone because they're white. It can go both ways, I think, with that colorblindness. I think sometimes some people are colorblindness and they just accept everyone and they want everyone in their company, where it also could be that you're pinpointing someone out of that group, right? And you're not hiring it specifically because of that. So I don't know. I think that colorblindness is not the same as discrimination.
As more as, if it's going to align with any of the paradigms, it would be the assimilation.
Yeah.
See, and I think Melody, the speaker, I actually watched it a couple times. She's pretty amazing.
She was.
And she says at the end, she's a CEO of her own company, and she talks about being bold and being courageous. And I think that kind of, I don't think it has anything to do with this discrimination. I think it definitely has that individual, you have your own experiences, your own life experiences to bring to unify a company or a business. So I don't think it has.
That's exactly what I took out of the video. Yeah, I watched it twice and I took the same thing as Lydia did on it. I thought it was more about being bold and courageous and bringing a company together as a whole is what she was talking about, not saying, hey, just because I had this or because I didn't have this, I made it so far. I feel like she really wanted it to be this huge, like, upbeat for everybody to become better as a group. Yeah. And I thought that's why she was such a powerful speaker and you were so, like, able to listen to her. Like, she was a great speaker. And, we get some of those talks, at least through my courses in the history of my classes, where I'm like, oh, wow, how long is this talk going to go? This is a really dry speaker. And this one, she wasn't. She was really good. So I felt like that was kind of nice to see in our HR stuff. Did you have anything on that, Spencer?
This is something that I don't know. This topic is so hard for me because I want like a clear-cut answer, and I don't know if there is one. And so I just going back and forth on, is there a line? How do you draw it? If you draw it, what is it? Is it over the top? I don't know. It's hard. I did. What was the example that she said? I can't remember earlier, but now I'm forgetting. Where she said that you can come up with someone that has a little bit more demographic or someone that's more qualified. What's the answer? And she just said yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, then what is it? I don't know. That's where I struggle because I want a more clear-cut answer.
You want a box to put it in, right?
Yeah.
So that's funny. I have my son. One of my kids are just like that. We were talking about something. He's like, I want all sides given to me, and I'm like, that's just not going to happen, buddy. So nice try though.
I don't know if it's who I am because I work in such a finite industry.
Well, it sounds like you're that's kind of where that's your forte, right? And so that's what you're comfortable with. Where I work in chaotic setting, and there's never one answer won't work for the next person that it worked yesterday for that person. So it's an ever changing question of the answer, the solution, and you never know. Like,
great that you're taking this course because it puts a different lens on it for you.
Mm-hmm.
As it seems like, yes, you are that type of person and that's the avenue of the career that you're in, but this will give you a different perspective of it's not black or white. When it comes to HR, it's always a case by case. One thing can be completely different from another. Something that would work for one isn't going to work for the other. Mm-hmm. And so,
sounds like my children.
I know. I have 4 very, very different boys. Yeah, that whole situation.
My 4 kids are different too.
I know. I was just telling my husband, why can't I figure out how to parent one and the next one's like a roller coaster. Okay, so the next question was, why do the authors of Making Differences Matter believe the integration, learning, and effective program is the best approach to diversity in the workplace? Do you agree? Explain why or why not.
I think that it's good because it cultivates a sense of unity or trust. I could see how the differentiation be like, yeah, we're all different, and so since I'm different, I'm going to kind of do it my own way. So I can see how, I think if your end goal is to be like super unified, then integration, that aspect of like we're all on the same team, even though we have these differences, we're all here to get the same goal. I think that's super effective.
Yeah,
I do.
You can be different, but the same at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think a great example is the church in this. Like, you can have multiple bishops all in different life occupations, and they're out for the same goal, right? Is to help the ward. And that's how I really think of it, is like there's some guidelines, and just like that in the team setting, there is a guideline. They need some work. They need to meet some goal, right? But everybody gets to go about it in different ways, and so does every bishop. I've had bishops where they're a lot different than my last, some are, it just really matters to them. Their personalities come out in that. And I think that's what I liked about the integration, was that we're all on the same team with our differences, right? But not despite them. And I am being in HR too, and I know there's a couple of you there. Sometimes I think we can get hung up. I've seen it in dynamics where people are hired because we want to meet our criteria or what we needed for our setting, or we were worried about it, where I think we need to look at how we can diversify, but still we're not there just because of that, right? We're there for this team dynamic. And what are they bringing to the team? And I think that's where it's got to come back on too, is not despite them, right? Our differences, we're working as a team. And I really do like how much this article kind of put that together, Like, I've been in dynamics where we're all the same, and I know you're doing that right now. You said, like, a lot of your work colleagues are the same. And sometimes that can be tough, because it's, like, tedious, and you're all competing for the exact same attention, because there is no difference in stuff going on, it seems like. And so it just depends on that dynamic in your HR.
And I think it also brings in the integration eliminates all form of dominance, so that there's full contribution from others. It doesn't matter if, race or gender or anything. So that's a big part of it. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's huge, it eliminates the dominance. I think that's in every aspect, like, we were just talking about, like, at our school, like a top-down model, and going away from the top-down model to more of a equal across-the-board model, to equal out our teachers with their administration, so they feel like they had as much power to the school to give back that input. Because I do think sometimes that dominance makes it hard for people to open up and really give input, because they're afraid of what's going to happen, right? Yeah. And if we don't have in that integration in a workplace, it's really hard to have effective work, because everyone's always looking to protect their own at that point. So the next question to move on was, unless anyone has anything else on that, does anyone? We're good? Okay. It was part 2, and it said color bravery. Why does Hobson mean about being color brave? Why do you think color braveness would look like in the workplace? Is it similar to the integration, or is she talking about something different? That one's kind of a little harder, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the color brave is actually very, very similar to what she was talking about in the integration, because it didn't matter who you are or what ethnicity you were, or the color of your skin. It didn't matter to her. Across the board, we all had equal to put out in the company, right? And so I kind of feel like that's what she was teaching. Like she said, she was teaching be brave, courageous, and I think that's kind of what I think it's exactly the exact same thing as integration that she comes back down to. But that's just my opinion on the take of it, was that it was a lot about integration.
Yeah, I think so. When she talks about the example of the smallpox vaccination, and that it was actually discovered, let's see, where did it say? The milkmaids and the whole route that it took to even discover that. It's embracing people's differences. And then also, like you mentioned, somebody mentioned before about, let's see, she said a guy named John Skipper, he runs ESPN, and then about, do you want me to hire the minority or do you want me to hire the best person for the job? And he says yes. And I think that really integrates cultural backgrounds and differences. So
I think it does. I mean, this is where it pulls me in a work setting, and I've told my husband this before. If I was up against anyone, I don't want to win a spot in a job because I'm female. If that was a more male-driven position, right? That's not why I want to get the position. I want to get it earned on who I am. And I think that's kind of what the integration reminded me of, is that we're out for the right reason to get the positions across the board. And by default, if you look for it that way, everybody's going to get a position in there because we'll have enough places for people if we're looking for them in the right location, instead of just being like, well, they're equals, so I'm going to give it to the female, or that we're equal, I'm going to give it to the guy because that's what I need in this setting, right? I need to meet my requirements by my company. And so to me, that's what I really liked about the integration. I felt like it kind of eliminated that and looked back at the across the board, what was the right thing for the company and for us as a people. But that was kind of my take on it, just reading it. I kept thinking, well, I've never liked the fact that I don't want to win a position that way. I want to win it on my value of who I am.
Mm-hmm. So then I guess the question I have in response to that is, how can you be oriented to be diversified and not have that treatment towards someone?
Like
does that make sense?
The unequal treatment of like how you pick them?
Yeah, like we want to be more diversified, so we're going to like reach out to people of different backgrounds, but we're not going to hire them just because we need to hire them. I don't know. Do you see what my
No, I see what you're
is?
saying. That's an interesting thing because just barely in our company, I'm hiring a brand new set of parapros, right? And I just did our survey and we're super low. In our community, we have a high Hispanic Latino population and we don't really have any in the school, it seems like, for whatever reason. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And someone was like, well, we need to make sure we hire at least 2 that are Hispanic. And we made a very big point after meeting with some people in our a law office too, seeking some legal counsel, is they were saying take the applications across the board, have a rubric set across, and don't even look at that piece yet. Just have someone read the resume part of what they've done so that when we have anything facing us, we can say, well, this is the rubrics we used and why we picked them. And so I feel like that does diversify people because we're picking them for the right reasons. Because if their culture background and their resume stands out to us like huge and they've got the skill set we want, we're going to pick them, right? We're not just picking them because we want to diversify our company or our school. And I felt like that was like a good advice because I was like, okay, good point. I don't need to feel driven to just do this to meet a need. Because we are not required. We just wanted to make sure we were reaching out to the Hispanic population because I'm sure they do have. We've had some really great employees that are bilingual to bring into our school system that we don't have right now. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's what would stand out to me. Oh, they're bilingual. Okay, great. They can bring me something I really need in our school right now. Not just check a box, right? I think that's where your boundary is. We're not checking boxes. We're looking for skill sets that they may bring in from their diversity they hold that I don't hold. I'm not bilingual. I can't bring in that aspect to my school that they could for me. So,
yeah, I think making sure that companies stay away from, quotas or meeting your numbers, that you could get into some big trouble by using that terminology of, hitting our quotas or our numbers, because you can't do that. Mm-hmm. Now, in the fact of, trying to get there and saying, okay, well, I'm going to hire someone, if this person is, say, a white male in his 20s or 30s that has more qualification, then yes, of course you're going to hire that one. But the question comes down to, are you truly reaching out to someone who can meet that exact same skill set within another culture or background? Or are you assuming that this white male is going to be more qualified than any other Hispanic male that they come across, or Hispanic female? You know, are you truly reaching out and trying to find those that will be just as qualified, if not more, that have a diverse background? You know, where are we looking for those applicants at? If all we're finding is that all of them are, you know, white males within a certain group, you know, then what needs to be taken a look at is, where are you trying to search for these candidates?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's plenty of people of diverse background that can run circles around other diverse cultures. So just trying to find the right fit for that position, like you say.
I agree, and I think like you were just talking about, Spencer, in your group you've got young, right, out of college. Well, I'm guessing they're targeting fresh out of college recruits, right? They're going to the colleges recruiting for their jobs. Because also, in my reality in the school system, I pay a first-year teacher less than I have to pay a 10-year teacher. So it matters to a company in a little ways. It does matter, and so, but then you do have to look, because there's a value that the 10-year brings that my first year can't bring to my table. Right? They're going to bring huge skill sets that I really want, and a classroom management that my first year teacher won't bring, even though I'm paying them less. You know, that's where it's hard, is finding that, looking in the right dynamic. Because if I'm searching for a first year teacher, I'm going to go to fresh out of college. I'm going to reach out to a couple of the colleges that I know that do great teaching programs, and I'm going to reach out to them and look for a fresh graduate. But I'm looking for a 10-year teacher. I'm going to start promoting in some newspapers. I'm going to promote across the valley, and I'm going to promote online, hoping to find someone across the states that has what I'm looking for, my criteria. Yeah. So I widen my search.
Keeping in mind, once we have a diverse group of associates, are we truly being integrated with them? Are we truly welcoming, you know, and teaching the leaders how to welcome diversity? Because you could have diversity in your roles and not truly be diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The leaders really have to have a vision of the purpose of having diversity. I mean, that's where it's going to start.
Absolutely. The next question was, the authors of Making Different Matters explains that some managers are more comfortable addressing problems with outright discrimination than more subtle diversity problems. Have you been in a team, group, or an organization where one person's ideas or approach to doing work was hard for the rest of the group to understand because of difference in background, experience, gender, race, or something else? I personally have. I had a director last year. She was fresh as a director, first year ever running a school. She'd only taught a couple years in general, so it was really tough because she didn't even know how the teachers could relate to her. And then on top of that, she came from a background of a juvenile detention center, right? So her most experience was from really hard kids. But she was a director over an elementary school in a very Waldorf setting, which I don't know if you guys don't know Waldorf. They don't do technology base in the younger grades. And so she's coming from this, you know, just not an approach, a more friendly approach. And she is coming from a very like cut and dry rules, you know, and I think her background really affected how she can handle the situation at our school, because she didn't understand where the teachers were coming from, the culture they were in. And on top of that, I don't think she had experience enough to run a program. I don't think anyone should get shoved in that type of position when they haven't actually taught enough to know where they're coming from. So she didn't really have a race difference with us by any means. I just think she had a culture difference of where she grew up and the background of understanding other views besides her own.
Yeah, the gal I mentioned earlier, that her first language is Japanese. She is a full-fledged teacher over in Japan, and she wanted to gain some more experience, so she's a paraprofessional with me. And the first month of school, she cried every week because the American race is just so much louder than the Japanese. And it was hard for her to feel unified in being at work and doing her job. It was a really big challenge. And I tried to empathize with her, but it was hard to be unified with her when she struggled so much with our different, I mean, culture, I guess, race, culture, if that.
Yeah. My current director, our director last year only lasted a year with her experience. I just don't think she was a fit, and everyone kind of let her know that, and so she didn't fit, unfortunately. But our new one, he's been around the valley for years that we live in, but he is originally from, like I said, England, so he has a very different background culture, but he uses that to his advantage. He really brings in that culture to the classrooms and teaches the teachers. But he'll be the first one to say, "I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you tell me?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay. You want to know what I'm talking about?" And little things like, I didn't realize there was 2 ways to spell canceled. By the way, everybody, there is, because in England it's spelled different. And I kept correcting his work when it kept coming across my desk and sending it back to him, like, "Please spell check your work before you send it to the parents." And he kept saying, "I don't know why you're doing that." And finally, I had to Google it. So I do think you realize there is a difference in culture. They have differences, and they were both right. And that's why when he spell checked on his computer, it never highlighted it. But when I checked it, I was like, that does not look right. That's not how you spell it. And so you notice, being raised in different cultures, there is differences in holidays. And, I know one of our gals is from Canada who works as a teacher, and it's hard for her because their Thanksgiving is different. It's earlier in the year, but we take off school to celebrate our Thanksgiving, right, in the U.S. So she doesn't get to celebrate her Thanksgiving. She has to take her own holiday, her own sick days to celebrate that. And I think that can be hard for people when there's a difference of your race, and how your culture differences can really matter, and it can affect your workplace, when everyone else is celebrating Christmas, and if they don't do Christmas, that's hard too. We don't call ours Christmas anymore. We call it winter break, because there is differences of how people celebrate now, unfortunately, but everyone has a difference, right?
Yeah. So an example that I can bring from somebody that I had worked with in the past is one of our goals was to try to reduce our retention numbers. And so in doing so, we took all the information we had from our exit interviews, and we compiled them together and came up with the data that a majority of the people were leaving the company because of culture and religious differences. So it was a Fortune 500 company that was around the world. And so we would recruit people from around the world to come to the headquarters. And so you had many, many different backgrounds. And so one thing that we decided to do within the diversity cover was come up with a culture week. And so we reached out to each of our group associations that we had within the company. We have a Hispanic league, each different one that you could think of. We had a group for that. So we reached out to the leaders of each one, and we put together a culture week where we had people share their culture. It was in our big auditorium, and there were tables all around, and they shared just different things about their culture and their food. People probably mainly went for food, but they shared their different ethnic food. And then we also did that in conjunction with the National Day of Prayer.
Very cool.
And religions from across the group, and had them come together, and we did on National Day of Prayer. I can't remember what we called it, but it, and we actually had an LBS table there as well. And so each table, we had our missionaries come, was there, and you can, it was in one of our long hallways, and you're able to go and actually walk down the hall and talk to people of all different religious backgrounds. And so after we saw a reduction in our numbers, and so I think that right there, just figuring out why people were leaving and that type of thing.
I think that's important to know why they're leaving. We did last year, 75% of our school was going to leave our district at that point due to the director. And we did the same thing. We sent out a survey. We wanted to know why we weren't retaining any teachers for next year. And we realized it was the differences of her ability to handle situations. She didn't understand how to link with people from a different background. She really had a hard time with that. And I think every aspect, I think we do that, because I know sometimes I feel like I have to remember to link with other people too, you know, because we come from a different background a little bit. And so I have to remember, like, I can't be absent from the social events, even if there may be alcohol there. I just have to remind myself, like, I let people know, like, hey, I'm going to be there for a split second. I'm going to, you know, say hi and do my part, but leave. Because I want to make sure they know that I'm still accepting them as people. Maybe not the drinking part, but I accept them as people, right? So that I should show up to their social event and still interact with them. But when I hosted it at my home for work things, I make sure alcohol is known that it's not invited, right? So that we have both atmospheres for them. I'm picking up someone's background music sound. Does anyone else hear it besides me?
It went away.
It went away just now. Okay. I was just wondering if it was me. I was like, I don't think that's my teenager anywhere near me. So, and the next question kind of leads right into that. What could have been done in the situation to gain the diversity from the diversity of the group? And I can tell you, in our experience at our school district last year, if she had came to us willing to learn from each one of us instead of attack our diversities, it would have brought us together as a huge group, because that's exactly what the director this year came in. He came in and said, I hear we're all from different groups, and how can I get to know you? And he held social events. Like, we had a weekly, our staff meetings weren't staff meetings, they were staff social events to get to know each other. Like, at first I thought, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. We are supposed to be going over our meeting stuff we need to do for the week. I need to check off my list and move on. But he focused on building a team. And I think that's exactly what you have to do with diversity. You have to build unity. And unity is accepting who they are and building it up. And that's, again, what this whole lesson was about. Making the differences matter in a positive way, right? We need to use their skill sets. Something that my really good girlfriend from Canada that's in our school has to offer, I don't have to offer. She has something I've never, experienced, or has that. I don't have that diversity in my life as she does. And so it's great to be able to use her skill set to bring something into the school as well, instead of like being impolite and not listening or accepting what they have to offer.
Yeah, it's definitely a matter of supporting each other and communicating, because if someone has a need and they don't know how to communicate it, then you can't be unified. So with the gal I work with, she's made it. School year ends next week, and we've been able to support her through the Wild American Children. She'll have lunch duty, and I can't believe kids will be eating food and they drop it and they don't even pick it up.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. So she has been able to talk about it and seek our help and guidance and learning the rules for these kids, because they're expected to clean up. They just don't have that format at home. And so when they come to school, they're kind of wild and crazy sometimes. So just supporting her and her changes she's had to go through and dealing with rude Americans.
Our different cultures, right? Is she coming back next year, or is this her only year with you guys?
What was that?
Is she coming back next year? Or is this her only year?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yep,
good for
we'll
her.
be again together next year.
Very cool.
Yeah, she's really enjoyed it. She's learned a lot.
The first year is the hardest. It really is. Says many companies still do have problems with outright discrimination. Have you ever worked for or observed a company where they are outright discrimination problems? What was that experience like? I have. And I honestly, it was probably the toughest time I've ever worked. I think my husband felt like I came home with a sounding board every day, and he would be like, put up a wall and be like, she's going to go for 2 hours to tell me about how bad the day was, you know? Because it made it for a miserable time when you left your job to have discrimination because you were really frustrated how people were treated. And it wasn't always directed at me per se, because I am the only LDS person in my work. And I come from a community that's all resort town skiing, and the population is really tiny here of the members. My kids are the only kid that is LDS in their class. There's only, my son's deacons there's 4 of them. I mean, there's not very many. And so it's tough because sometimes I feel like that discrimination happens a lot in the religious aspect, because sometimes I felt like last year was left out of things because I don't go to the drinking events. But I've learned to also manage where some of that's an outlook on discrimination, right? Because I can appear and I can make myself be part of the event before they start the alcohol part and still be part of that event without feeling like I'm giving up some of my standards to the group. So, I mean, that was tough. And I know for me, last year, I was like, before we changed directions, I was ready to leave. I was like, I don't think this is a fit for me. I've done this and I had done it a couple years. It wasn't like my first rodeo with them. And my background is special education, so discrimination is really big to me because I have a son that's autistic. And it's really hard to see people almost not invite them because they're different, right? And I get it because I come from that, and it's tough. It's tough to manage that. And sometimes I think discrimination happens out of convenience. We're just afraid to include someone because of the extra work it's going to cause in our eyes. And that's what I realized in some of my situations, that's how the discrimination started for me was, we didn't want to add extra work to our plate. So we just excluded them.
Yeah, I've never experienced workplace discrimination. Have you, Spencer?
No, I was trying to think. Nothing comes to mind. I mean, I'm just barely in the workforce. So.
Me too. I started my first job in August.
Good for you guys.
I think that obviously I have dealt with some form of discrimination, and even if it's some unconscious bias, but I have never been in a company, and I think that would be an HR nightmare, to be in a company that's outright discriminatory. There are unconscious bias that HR needs to work through, but to be outright discriminatory, no, I've never been with a company that has been that, and that I feel sorry for their HR.
Absolutely. It's a tough situation. It takes for a big wraparound. For ours last year, it took us the whole school deciding they were going to leave, and they fired the upper management until it fixed it, Sometimes it takes a huge turnaround. So the next question is, when did John Skipper, ESPN president, mean when he answered yes to the question, do we hire the minority of the person who is most qualified? Do you believe this is right? Approach to hiring for diversity. I know we'd already talked about it, and I personally think it was the right thing to do. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think it took all question out. It's like, to me, it's like having a blank slate. And this is, because with my job, I do operations and HR and a lot of the whole hands-on. And I do a lot of contracts bidding for our school district, right? And I have to take out the personal factor, and that's kind of what the yes reminded me of. It's like yes to it. It took out that personal. Yes, I accept that you weren't just dividing and picking it off of one little piece, right? And I feel like that's what he meant with that. John Skipper did was yes, not maybe here. No, I want this piece. You know, like he was accepting the whole picture there and the person.
I think so.
What do you guys think?
For me, I think as long as they keep in mind that it's like what we discussed earlier, that they are just looking for the best candidate, but like casting their net far enough to get a handful of different people that would be qualified from different backgrounds. That way they don't have like a weird agenda behind it, that they're still finding the best candidate who could be, you know, from a different culture, background, ethnicity, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
I agree.
The next part, in part 3, is counseling, and it says, Elder Ballard describes a church council. Does the ward council he describes from the integration explain?
Yes, integration, because he talks specifically about the bishop not needing to do everything. The bishop doesn't need to dominate every decision and every little step board members take. And so I believe it does.
I believe it does too, because my husband, I just remember when we were in the bishopric and he was in there for a while, I remember thinking what's so lovely about the ward councils is that you can have anyone from a janitor to a CEO on there, right? It doesn't matter what you do. You need all of that. You need both aspects. Like my dad, I grew up, he was a head custodian my whole life, and then my husband and I remember someone saying something to me about how, gosh, do you wish you'd had a better job? And I was like, no, I don't. I learned a lot from my dad because I run an operations. They're like, oh, you've come so far from that. And I want to think so poorly of how they think about that, because every piece plays a part in the puzzle. And what my dad taught me from his work ethic is why I'm where I'm at, right? But everybody has a different piece. We can't all be a CEO of a company, right? And just like not everyone can be the bishop in a ward. We have to have some bishops and some counselors and some nursery leaders, and nothing is above the other, right? A nursery leader is no less important than our bishop is. We have to think of them all equal, or else we don't have that integration that is so important in the ward.
Yeah, we lift where we stand.
I think it's important to, remember from a bishop or even a CEO perspective, it's not their duty to sit here and say, okay, this is what we're going to do without taking any input from the council or the group or their leaders within the company. That's not a sign of a good CEO, and it's not a sign of even a good bishop, to say this is how it's going to be, to take a step back and actually get input and perspective and different thoughts from the people around him. That's why he put the leaders in the spots that they're there, and that's what the Lord put the leaders in the spots that they're there, to give the bishop counsel himself to help to guide him, just like the head of a company would.
I agree. I think Julia hit that right on our next question was, what are the advantages to a bishop of counseling with Elders Quorum president, Relief Society president, the primary president, and others? And it's exactly that reason. They're all put in a spot for a reason. And I can't answer to why there's needs in the Elders Quorum, but I could tell you what the Relief Society needs are, right? So the bishop needs all those pieces. And I remember when my husband was in the bishopric and we had a young family, and he was saying, there's pieces that he can't get from himself. He could go view that exact same situation, but that Relief Society president is going to know more than he does about it, just by being in there and feeling from them. And we all have different aspects. Like, he had great skills that I couldn't offer, and I have great skills he doesn't. It's the same in a marriage, right? There's some pieces that we have to offer each other. We can't be the only person in it all. You can't be married to yourself. It just doesn't quite work, does it? And so, I mean, that's kind of important to remember.
And I see that this specific principle, I think, is being magnified with all of the changes that have been rolling out in the past few months.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking for that more now than ever with this whole ministering initiative. So I think it's really cool that we bring that up.
Yeah, I think it's super important. I think that's exactly where it hits on the ministering versus you're not picking apart one thing. It's a huge group. And it's been a couple years, but you guys remember how like Sunday school went from like a lesson to more of a, like a discussion?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it was bringing back was this exact thing. We aren't, you can't just stand up there and preach to someone and hope that they understand it. We need everyone's view in it. And everyone's opinion really does matter. And their experiences help other people. And so the next question is, how could a bishop use the diversity of his councils to help the ward?
I think just ask for more input. Be more collected as a team versus obviously there are times when he does need to act under the impressions. I mean, that's his calling. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that he can't also take counsel from others as well. That's why they're there.
Absolutely. It's ultimately his choice. It's, he's the one who holds the keys. He's the one that's in that position, and it's his choice. But to take the different thoughts from the people around him would be a great help to the ward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they're each receiving their own revelation, and I think that's a big part of it too.
Mm-hmm. I think we're given an area to concentrate on, and he is over everything, and so he needs those pieces that people can concentrate on and bring him in the input to help him understand it all. Have you seen bishops or other church leaders do this? Take diversity of his councils to help the ward?
I'm sure they have. I've never been in any of the meetings, but I'm sure.
Well, have you ever seen I don't think you have to be in the meetings to understand that. I think when you see an effective ward, they're already doing that. Because to have an effective ward, they have to be using some of the councils,
Hopefully.
I've been in some wards where there's a lot more rift than others, right? There's more conflict, and I feel like the ones that we haven't had conflict, you can tell that they genuinely are trying to take pieces from other people and understand what's going on and really help those other people. And I think we've all been in probably a little of both situations if you've been in multiple wards by now,
Yeah, we currently have quite the diverse bishopric. Our bishop is a farmer, and then his counselors are just absolutely night and day from one another. One counselor can tell you every story ever written, every song, every life event, and the other counselor is very straight arrow. He's very, this scripture, like nothing personal comes from him. And I think that combination of men, it makes for a great, they're unified in a cause, and I think they work well together. So it's very interesting to see those different fellows.
I think that's so true. Like, I remember when my husband got put in the bishopric, we had no idea who the other two people were, and they couldn't be any different than us, right? Like, I had really young kids, one was retired, and then this other one had it couldn't have been any different. But the best part about that was their skill sets are stuff my husband didn't have, right? He couldn't bring that to the table, but what they had. And just like we've all talked about, we can't have three leaders we can't have three presidents in the same group. It usually fails when there's three people taking charge because they can't work together. They want the exact same thing. They don't want to help each other out. They're looking for whose spot and glory, and that's hard when you can't find someone who's willing to help each other out for the better good of it all. The next thing was part 4 wrap up. The Making Differences Matter article assumes there is some value to companies in promoting a diverse workplace. Do you agree? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages?
Well, I think this conversation we've had has definitely helped me understand it a lot better. I think before I was still pretty lost as far as my viewpoints. I do see it as very important. I see the benefits of it is that it gives you more perspectives from different people because everyone has their own experiences. And I think that makes you a more rounded group, a rounded team, makes you more effective. So I think that's one of the benefits that I see. And then it's just not so boring because everyone's the same. There's different people.
Yeah, I see the benefits. I agree with Spencer. There's the advantages of having people from, many diverse backgrounds that can bring more to the table and could also potentially help the company stay out of trouble when it comes to something that could be offensive. But I could see the disadvantages as well, to where if a company does not truly teach leadership how to handle different diverse groups, it could potentially be problems.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a great thing if it's done correctly.
Straight from the article, it says that a diverse workforce will increase organizational effectiveness, lift morale, bring greater access to new segments of the marketplace, enhance productivity, and overall, it will be a better business to work for. And, thinking of all of these parts, it's just being able to really be who you are, receive the education that you want to, and then have that job that really helps bring out every part of your life experiences, your personality, what you have to offer to other people. So
I agree. I think that's exactly what it does. And I think the disadvantages sometimes can be like, I've seen it a few times with our new director. He's such a phenomenal guy, but if I didn't let some things roll off of me, his culture differences or things he says, sometimes I'd be like, I don't find that acceptable. But that's what the diversity brings in. It brings a little bit of they have different personalities of how they do things, right? And so sometimes the diversity does lead you to actually having to grow a little, because all the same sometimes can be easy, right? If I know the person right next to me is going to do the same thing as me, they're never going to irritate me, right? But say he's got a different perspective on how he's going to hold group meetings, and I like to do them this way, it's going to make me grow a little bit or irritate me the first couple times. And I've seen both, but I think the overall advantage is so huge that you have to do that. You have to let those disadvantages go so that you can grow in a company. And that leads us to our next one, which is says, what approach would you take to diversity as a manager? And I would do the one we talked about this whole time, in the integration, because I truly think it really is what makes a company successful in the long term. What do you guys think?
I also see the benefit of it. The integration, I think it's the best approach. Because I think my big thing is we all have to be unified on the same purpose. So if it gets us there, then that's what we should do.
I think if you really lead down to this, is really interesting. It kept coming back to the church to me, because we've been in a lot of different positions in our ward, and I remember telling my husband, it's the church. It is integration, right? They integrate a whole bunch of different cultures and diversity into one group and make it this amazing atmosphere. You can have anywhere from extremely wealthy to extremely poverty in your ward, but we come together as one family, right? And a workplace is kind of like a family. It's supposed to be this one dynamic that you're coming together as for a sole purpose. And it's different than church because we're coming to a purpose for what? A financial need of some sort or a company desire that they're doing, but it's all the same. We have a purpose, and it doesn't matter what background you come from. You're all looking for that same purpose. And so I think the integration is huge. And it's interesting to see this article really link back to how much our church has been founded on that for so long, you know, and everything we do.
Yeah. The approach I would also take is integration. It's just an overall better plan. So
I think that wraps us up. Do you guys have anything else?
So
I'm gonna stop recording for
it's not to do with this.
Yeah, just give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna stop the recording and then we can do the